Welcome back to the Viking Update Show. Last week, you had the treat of hearing Alec Lewis with John Krawczynski. This week, you're stuck with me, Jim Souhan. I'm back after a week away in Spain to talk about the Vikings with John Krawczynski here on the Viking Update Show. The John Krawczynski Show will be live Friday night at Head Flyer Brewing. Special guest, Micah Nori, top assistant on Chris Finch's staff. A great guy. Should be a lot of fun. We always pack the place out for these shows. This is kind of a farewell to Head Flyer, which is no longer going to be with us. And they've been great to us. Great time to come out. And if you're a Viking fan, you will enjoy the Timberwolves conversation. You'll also be around a lot of Minnesota sports fans. I highly recommend it. The Viking Update Show is presented to you by OnX Hunt and is coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio. All right, John. Let's get to kind of the nice story. I think, the quarterback room has been settled. We're a little bit away from the draft. We'll get to all that stuff, but let's make sure we emphasize something really cool. The fact that CJ Ham, Adam Thielen, played for relatively small colleges, upper Midwest guys. They end up having remarkably long, productive careers. They end up being leaders. They end up overachieving in pretty much every way. And I think it was really cool that they got together for their retirement. I mean, Thielen, absolutely, either of them absolutely could have pulled off their own retirement day and had that time and the media attention and the podium to themselves. They decided to do it together. I thought it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I really thought so too, Jim. You're totally right about, especially I think with Thielen, the career that he had, all the production that he had. Maybe you would think, hey, Steve, a receiver wants his own day, and have everything just kind of go his way. But sharing the spotlight with CJ Ham was really, really cool. And I think a real testament to the way that CJ Ham was viewed in that locker room. And, we got to see some more of it down the stretch last season as it became kind of more and more apparent that this was going to be CJ's last run. That you got teammates really talking about the impact that he had. You talking about the teammate that he was, the leader and all of those things. But for most of his career, he was in the shadows. He was kind of just in the background. And so I thought that gesture really did kind of cement exactly what CJ Ham meant, to this group. And for Adam Thielen, one of the truly great development stories, success stories in franchise history, to willingly share the spotlight like that with him was just super, super cool.
No doubt about it. And, Thielen was not highly productive his last couple of years. So it's not like we need to figure out how they're going to replace Adam Thielen, although they do need a third receiver, and we'll talk about that here in a second. CJ Ham's an intriguing guy to replace. A great special teamer, great leader, who usually, he was not going to put up big stats, but he usually made the right play. Excellent blocker, excellent pass protection blocker, could get you a couple of yards if he needed it. Do they try to replace CJ Ham, or do they just go to more 3 and 4 receiver sets?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, Jim, the other element that you have to factor in when we're talking about this, about finding another CJ Ham, is how few CJ Hams are being produced these days.
Yeah.
Like the fullback is just not a priority position in college. And certainly, he was, one of the 3 or 4 probably that you could think of in the NFL that still had a prominent role in an offense from a blocking standpoint, getting it to him in the passing game, maybe a short yardage run here or there. But he's a bit of a dinosaur. That position is a bit of a dinosaur and going extinct. And so even if a team kind of looks at what CJ Ham brings to the table, how he can be a battering ram in the backfield, how he can, sneak out and catch passes for 5, 6, 7 yards to keep the chains moving. If you say, yeah, we want that kind of a player, where are you going to find it? There just are not many out there. So my inclination, Jim, is that they will kind of evolve the offense away from CJ Ham, from a fullback kind of thing. I think that my impression is that CJ Ham essentially forced his way into the Vikings plans from a game plan perspective this last year or two, just because he was so valuable and so unique. And now that he is gone, I don't even know that they replace him. I think that they just evolve, because it's almost impossible to find a guy who does exactly what CJ Ham does anymore.
Which do you think was the better athlete?
Boy, that's a tough one. I guess I lean Thielen, just because we saw him do more athletic things on a daily or on a week by week basis. I mean, CJ did amazing things like within the trenches, kind of in close quarters, but it was just harder to see it all the time. But if you put the two of them in a decathlon, would CJ Ham win? Probably. But we just saw Adam Thielen with the route running, with the, leaping catches on the sideline and the toe taps and all those things. You thought, okay, yeah, supreme athlete. CJ Ham's highlights weren't like that, but to get that size of body moving the way that he did, I mean, incredibly athletic dude.
Yeah. I think you hit on just the way I would have put it too. If you put him in a decathlon, I think CJ Ham wins, but football is not about just pure strength and speed. It's also about flexibility, dexterity. And if you play at Adam Thielen's position, the way he played it, it's about being able to stretch out and make incredible catches, take hits while you're taking catches. So yeah, I think Thielen obviously was the better football player. Ham might have been the better track athlete, if that matters. Probably didn't matter. I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up. Speaking of Thielen, at the end of his career, he was kind of a third, fourth receiver. With Jalen Naylor leading, this team seems to be in need of a third receiver for, Kevin O'Connell's favorite set, which is a 3-receiver set. DeAndre Hopkins has made it clear that he would like to play with Kyler Murray and for the Vikings. Are you buying DeAndre Hopkins as a viable, logical third receiver, or would you like to see him to go young? Would you like to see him draft somebody? What do you want to see happen at that position?
Yeah, I would probably like to see, if possible, them go down multiple roads this way. In that, sure, bring DeAndre Hopkins in for, training camp, just see how he's doing. As an experienced, reliable guy who has played with Kyler Murray, it makes some sense. I will say that in my kind of experience in my history covering this league, a lot of times when you hear a veteran player saying, whenever they call, I'm ready, there's a reason for that, in that you wonder if they have anything left in the tank. You wonder if how much, what can they do physically to this point, and do they have anyone else, breaking down their door to try and give them a contract? And the answer is no. And so then you immediately start to wonder if DeAndre Hopkins is just kind of at this point in his career where there's not a whole lot left. If he comes in as a third receiver, maybe you need less. And so there is, kind of some intrigue there, but I would like them to see them bring in some kind of veteran established player, and then also add in the draft, possibly, another young receiver, and see if you can hit on someone with some juice and some speed and some quickness and some game breaking ability. And is Ty Felton that kind of guy? Maybe, or somebody like that. But I think that this feels like one of those scenarios where you have to throw a bunch of noodles at the wall and see what sticks. And so, I'm open to them pursuing any and all of those options, with the idea that, there's just so much kind of that can happen with a super young guy or with an older guy like Hopkins at that position, that it's best to just have a bunch of options available and see what you can get.
Yeah, I like Hopkins as long as you don't have to depend on him for much. I think he still has hands. I don't know if he has explosiveness. He's really always been great with body control, being able to make contested catches. I don't know that he can really, beat a defense anymore, but I think if he's in the right role and there's enough attention being paid to other receivers, he will catch the ball for you. He's probably, if you can bring in a veteran receiver of his caliber who loves Kyler Murray, that's probably a good thing for everybody. I just wouldn't depend on him being highly productive in that third receiver role. Ty Felton probably gets the first shot at being a third receiver unless they do something dramatic. I'll tell you what, though. Who I'm intrigued by as a sleeper is Miles Price.
Sure.
As a kind of, I could see him turning into kind of the slot receiver that they had hoped Rondale Moore would become. And condolences to everybody who knew Rondale Moore. That's still a horrific story, but just in terms of pure football, they wanted kind of a moves catch, run after the catch, quick end around kind of person in that role. I could see Miles Price developing into somebody like that.
It's a really good point. And typically, Jim, with those third receivers, that's the kind of physical sort of form that you think about, right? With that kind of a position, you think of fast, quick twitch, young guy who can, if he gets his hands on a pass at 8 yards, could take it 30 yards, and you kind of break a game open that way, but you probably are only going to get him the ball a few times a game and just see what he can do with it. Because I'm just looking up DeAndre Hopkins stats right now. In 2020 with the Cardinals, 115 catches, 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's great. Since then, number of catches, 42, 64, 75 in 2023 and 7 touchdowns with the Titans. But then in 2024, 15, 41 catches, 22 last year with Baltimore. It just looks like he is trending down. He's 33 years old now. Again, like you said, could he be a guy that even almost like Thielen last year, Jim, where he comes in for a few weeks at the start of the season while you're bringing Ty Felton or Miles Price along a little bit more, while you're bringing in a receiver that you drafted and giving him a little bit of time to develop. And then you just kind of like phase him out of the equation, as the season goes along. That kind of feels like maybe the right path to go. But Miles Price is another guy that certainly I want to get a long look at in training camp and see if he is ready to take on, more of a role. I do think that being a receiver in a Kevin O'Connell offense is demanding. And so, what does that look like when you have a lot more of that responsibility on your plate, and how do you handle it? But, with Felton and Price, you have some guys in-house that are at least intriguing enough. Then if you bring in a veteran guy, from the outside, like Hopkins, just to see if he has anything left, in a reduced role, maybe that could make some sense.
Let's get to the quarterback room. This is a Viking show. We got to get to the quarterback room and some other Viking intrigue. For the moment, we'd like to thank Aquarius Home Services. You are hearing the show from the Aquarius Home Services studio.
When your furnace, air conditioner, or thermostat isn't working right, you need a local team you can trust. Whether your home won't heat up, won't cool down, or your air quality is a concern, your home comfort team at Aquarius Home Services finds the problem fast and fixes it right. And you get $98 off any furnace or AC repair when you book with Aquarius today. Aquarius Home Services. One call, problem solved. Earning the right to be recommended. Schedule today at AquariusHomeservices.com.
Also want to ask, have you ever driven past a piece of land and wondered who owns that? Or maybe you need to know exactly where a property line runs. That's where Onyx Hunt comes in, and it's not just for hunters. There are folks using Onyx for their jobs every day throughout the country, from farmers and ranchers mapping out their fields, wildland firefighters navigating rough terrain, to construction workers needing to know who owns what property. This app offers something for everyone. If you need the best land ownership maps, aerial imagery, and property boundaries in your pocket, Onyx Hunt is the tool for the job. Try it free for 7 days. Download Onyx Hunt in the app or Google Play Store, or visit onyxmaps.com/hunt to get started. All right. I wrote a column upon my return from a week in Spain, which was a blast, by the way, beautiful country, saying that if each of the Vikings' decisions on their current quarterbacks, you can question. And I don't think they wanted to be in a situation where they had to go get a Kyler Murray to take, some responsibilities away from J.J. McCarthy. But if you think about it theoretically and what the ideal quarterback room would be, they might have accidentally ended up in a really good place. They got a 29-year-old guy with tons of experience, tons of athletic ability, who's been highly accurate and productive. They have a guy who's the 10th pick in the draft who I still think has a real chance, and he gets kind of back off for a little bit and develop a little more slowly, and might be the ideal kind of backup to come in and make things happen because he's shown the ability to make clutch plays. And then you have Carson Wentz coming back, who I think has altered perceptions of him and now might be the ideal veteran mentor, safety belt kind of guy. And then Max Brosmer, listen, he's a long shot, but he's an intriguing long shot. And if you're going to have 4 quarterbacks, he's probably the right guy to have as your 4th quarterback. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was kind of mildly surprised at sort of the way that the Carson Wentz acquisition or re-signing was analyzed by kind of the social media / media kind of environment, because they give him $3 million to come back. And there was sort of this notion that, Carson Wentz is not signing right now at this price point if he doesn't have a real shot at least being the backup. And the Vikings aren't paying him $3 million to just come in and be the 3rd quarterback. And
yes, they are.
Yeah. I mean, $3 million is nothing.
It's nothing.
It's nothing in this salary cap league. And so the way that I viewed it was, you have let's just say it, even though the Vikings haven't said it. You have a starting quarterback in Kyler Murray who has had injury issues and is smaller. You have a backup quarterback in J.J. McCarthy who has had a bunch of injury issues and is not a big dude and is kind of slight of frame. And so what Wentz feels like to me is another insurance policy on the 2 guys in front of him, who also, by the way, gets injured quite a bit. And so it feels like you have these 3 guys together that you say, okay, in case of emergency, you break glass, and then maybe, we might need all 3 of them because of the nature of the sport, the nature of the position, and the nature of all of these guys, getting hurt in a season. And so, I guess there's a small chance down the road that, that they would trade JJ McCarthy if they got the right offer. But I just don't see it that way. I just see it as they now have a guy who has had some success in this offense in Carson Wentz, in a veteran who did seem to kind of put a lot of the personality issues that you heard about with him in other locker rooms kind of behind him last year, and seemed to fit in well as a dude in that locker room. And then you have 2 guys with higher upside that get hurt a lot. And so it all makes sense to me that way. I don't think it would have been wise for them to go into this next season with Brosmer as their 3rd quarterback. I think that you want someone with some real experience who's done it in this offense, and just kind of all the way in the background there if you need him, and you go forward from there. That's just the way that I viewed it. And it seems to make a lot of sense. And I think it'll work out just fine.
Yeah, I was shocked to see the ESPN headlights, the social media posts that, Brandon Wentz, that means you're going to trade McCarthy. I don't see that at all. And here's the thing. We deal with this with NBA trade rumors all the time as well on your show. Can we guarantee that the Vikings will never trade J.J. McCarthy? Of course you can't.
No.
And you never know if somebody's going to offer him a 1st-round draft pick for J.J. McCarthy. Or, you don't know what you can't, just because you can't predict the future doesn't mean we have to be irrational about what's most likely to happen. They're not going to trade J.J. McCarthy. unless somebody just makes him a ridiculous offer, I don't see anybody make him a ridiculous offer. So
no, yeah, right now, Jim, yeah, like I just don't think the market is there at all, and so yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
And a couple other things here, Carson Wentz. I'm usually a big player safety guy. I hated the way the NFL hid concussion information from the players. I hate watching hits that really can ruin somebody's life. But I also thought there was a great overreaction last year when a lot of fans thought that Kevin O'Connell was doing something unethical by keeping Carson Wentz in that game against the Chargers. I think you almost have to look at this cynically in this way. Carson Wentz probably made $3 million that night. His willingness to go out there and take a beating when they needed him to go out there and take a beating probably got him this contract. And what NFL player wouldn't take that deal? I mean, they already know they're going to get beat up. They already know it's a physical game. If you are at the end of your career and you have to take a beating to get one more year out of a contract at an amount of money you'll never see again, you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And let's talk about this with Alec last week. I do think in this football environment, as I had a hard time watching it. That game.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
No, it was just like, come on, man, like help this guy out. Like, let's just throw someone else in there, give him a chance and go that way. But Wentz's willingness to continue to go out there when he was clearly in so much pain, it had to endear himself in that locker room. That's what guys value in this sport above all else is toughness. And what Wentz showed in that game was an incredible amount of toughness. I may have thought, man, Carson, what are you doing? This is unwise. But, these guys operate at a different level than normal human beings. And so, the way that he went about it there, the way that he handled it afterward when Kevin O'Connell was taking a lot of criticism for it and Wentz kind of stepped up and said, no, I was ready to go back in. I didn't want to come out, all of those things like that goes a long way in a locker room filled with dudes who are all playing hurt and who are all just, kind of held together with chewing gum and Toradol. And so, he's going to return to this team and this locker room and I think have a great standing within it. And so if it ever does get to another point where he has to go back in there, there's going to be guys that have his back when he goes in there. And as a third quarterback to have that kind of cachet in the locker room, I think is a real advantage. And so you definitely have to look at that part of it when you're considering all of your options for that third quarterback spot and a million other, kind of veteran quarterbacks who are out on the street looking for a job. Wentz is firmly established here with the guys in that locker room. And so that just makes a lot of sense to bring him in.
Here's a question I may be asking every week for a while. You and I were both in the locker room and Harrison Smith, spoke as if this might be it. He brought all of his best friends and favorite teammates to that final game. It felt like a farewell. And I think, speaking for myself, I felt like that was it for him just because of the tenor of his conversations. At this point, Vikings still need safety help. It looks like they have a chance to have a good team. Smith's probably feeling much better physically today than he did at the end of that season. What do you think the odds are that he decides to come back?
I mean, I would say that I think there's a real chance, Jim, because I do think this is one of those cases where the longer that it goes before you've heard anything from Harrison Smith, the more the window opens on a return. As you said, I think that, the amazing thing about covering an NFL team that I don't think even gets talked about enough is that at the end of every season, on a team with 60 players, there are probably 36 that want to retire. like that's just, their bodies are so beat up. They have been put through the ringer. And I think that it was very much like me on my last day of college at St. Thomas. I can't go another day. Like you couldn't, like if I needed to go one more day to get my diploma, I wouldn't have made it. And I just needed to get out of there. Well, that's the way that a lot of these NFL players feel, but me mentally, them physically and mentally, about putting your body through the just punishment that it takes to survive that long of a season. And so, you and I were there. We saw the look in his eyes. We saw the kind of how emotional that he was down the stretch the last few weeks, soaking everything in. And I do think that at that point in time, he was probably thinking, I can't make it another year. Like I've done everything that I can do. Like why would I put my body through this one more season? Like this is too hard. And, but the NFL offseason is longer than most off seasons, and that's a good thing. And probably around this time, as we get into March and April, and as the draft gets approaching, a player's body starts to heal, starts to kind of feel a little bit better. He may not like get out of bed and step down and immediately feel a jolt of pain rush, through his lower leg and into his back. And he might at least start to think, maybe I got one more. Maybe I can do it one more year. And I can guarantee you, given that the Vikings have not gone out and added any safeties, that Brian Flores is calling him all the time and just saying, hey, bud, you're feeling good, right? Let's go one more time, one more ride. And, I saw even, on Sunday, I think there was like that flag football kind of event this weekend. And Isaiah Rodgers even like tweeted out like, hey, Harrison Smith looks like he's having fun, like kind of thing. And so I'm sure that the full court press is on from teammates and coaches and all of those, and, all of those spots to say, come on, big guy, one more year. And the longer that we go, that he does not just say, yeah, I'm done. Like this is it. Definitive. Let's go. The more you do wonder if he's just going to try. Hey, they got a new quarterback. Some of the questions of last season were answered. Why not make one more run at this? What harm would it cause? And I think that's got to be factoring in right now.
Yeah, I'm exactly with you. I think he was sincerely ready to retire at the end of the season, but that doesn't mean he has to. It just doesn't mean he has to. And all of his buddies who came up here for his last game this year will be happy to come back for his last game next year as well. And most of them will probably love to see him still play in the game. It also is a reminder just how different the NFL is from the other major sports. You cover basketball a lot. I covered baseball a lot. We both covered the Vikings. And, basketball players, when they retire, guess what? They're still going to go shoot the ball around. They're still going to play pickup basketball. Mm-hmm. Golfers are going to play golf after they retire. Baseball players are still going to want to, coach their kids' game, throw batting practice, swing a bat, go to a batting cage. Hockey players are absolutely going to find pickup games and they're going to go skate around the backyard and they're made up. I mean, all these people love their sports. Football players ain't going to go run into somebody. They're not going to go block somebody. They're not going to hit a blocking slide. They're not going to let somebody crush them as they run over the middle. I mean, it's just it's a completely different mindset in sport because of the brutal nature of it.
Yeah, it's 100%. They know that when they are done, it's over. It is absolutely over. And for as beat up as a lot of these guys are, certainly there are many who end their career and are so relieved and like, oh man, I don't have to do this anymore. This is great. Like fantastic. But there are plenty of guys who crave the collision, like who want, to put that helmet on and walk out into the arena and, feel 75,000 people screaming and know that they are following their teammates into as close to what a battle is as you can find mimicked in professional sports. And it is intoxicating. And there is certainly a sense for a lot of these guys that, you know, as much as it is for other sports, but I think football is so much harder to duplicate any feeling remotely close to that, you know, in comparison to even other sports. And so I'm sure for a player like him who loves the game as much as he does, that has to be a real push and pull right now. And, I'm sure like he's thinking about his long-term health and family and all of that stuff as well. But man, when it comes down to it, there's just no way for him to find that, you know, just kind of that feeling that he gets in that locker room and on that field. And so I have no problem with him taking as much time as he needs. I would have zero issue if he said, look, I've given it all. I can't do it anymore. It would be a Hall of Fame caliber career that he would call an end to. But the other part that we haven't really talked about as much is even down the stretch last year, Jim, I thought that he was still a playmaker. Like, there were times earlier that I was like, we haven't seen Harrison Smith in a while, but as the season wound down, there were still times he was showing up in good ways. When you're watching those games, when you're watching them back on TV. So he still has something to offer to this team. And it is very hard for a player to walk away when they still feel like they can do it at a high level. And I think that Harrison Smith probably still feels that way.
Agreed. And they need a safety, and he's probably their best option. And he would probably sign a fairly team-friendly deal, and they could structure it any way they wanted to make it work under the salary cap, and he'd still be running Brian Flores' offense. And like you said, I honestly, middle of last season, I was like, he's done. And then he had a really good second half. So
he did.
Why say no? I mean, if the only reason for him to say no is if he really just doesn't want to do it, or he just doesn't think he can put in the work physically. In terms of just making a football decision, he would be a nice guy to have back.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Like there's a great reason to say no, and it's that you are putting your body into a car wreck every single week for 18 weeks in a row plus playoffs. But from a physical production standpoint, he can still give them enough. I would still bring in a young safety, like get someone to develop and all that stuff. But, I think he has more left in his tank than DeAndre Hopkins does right now. And so that's the decision to make.
That's a good way to put it. All right. Good stuff, John. Thank you. Again, Head Flyer Brewing, Friday night. Our starting time is 7, John?
7 p.m. Yep. Mike and Nori right at the top. So get there early, get a good seat. And Micah is one of the all-time great storytellers and characters in the league. And so we will have a really good time chopping it up at Head Flyer for their final kind of live show event, as well as they kind of get ready to shut the doors there.
Beautiful. Thank you, John. We'll talk to you next week.